Hi there, Paul Snyder, host of Huddle Up. To my immediate right, JT, also host of Huddle Up. Another week of sports in the books, and we're here to talk about it. So you can join in the conversation if you'd like. Our phone number here is 527-6449. We'll take your phone calls, as many as you want, as long as you want to talk about it until you make us mad, and then we'll cut the cord on you. So thanks for joining Huddle Up. Again, this is JT. Where do we start from here? There's a lot of stuff that went on this weekend that made my head hurt, and go from there. We got together for Eagles and Patriots, and I came over, sprucing my Tom Brady jersey and a box of Skittles, ready to sit back and watch a fun game, and it was fun, but just not for me.
Well, I mean, as I was telling you during the game, I couldn't even cheer on the Eagles until it was like 5 minutes left, and I was like, holy crap, they're actually going to win a game.
And even then, though, you were like, I'm not cheering yet. I'm not cheering yet. Because, they get within 7 points or 8 points, whatever it was, and you're just sitting there going, I told you I can't cheer yet. So
it was an interesting game, and, we'll blame it on missing players and drop passes. But at the same time, I mean, I'm not going to say my Eagles are good. They're not. They're absolutely awful. They have no right to play football this year. But their defense definitely played very, very well, and they read Brady very, very well. The biggest downfall for them is, I mean, even that last drive, I mean, they couldn't catch a ball for the life of them.
Right. And that's been the case these last few weeks, where without your main targets in there, people that Brady, and he's come out and said it's people that you have to depend on, and people that you have confidence in. Mm-hmm. These people aren't, that his weapons right now aren't catching the ball, and there seem to be it's that rotating door. Who's coming up? I mean, that's been the Patriots' way for a long time. Mm-hmm. Next man up. But what happens when that next man up is a wide receiver that your quarterback doesn't trust? Yep. And that's what we're starting to see. Some problems.
They've never fallen this deep into the roster before. I mean, this has been bad.
And they're 10-2. Think about that. Like, grab any other team and take out their top 2 starting wide receivers, their starting running back, and half their linemen, and tell me where they're at. I bet you they're not at 10-2.
Well, so think about this in this aspect. All right, we've got the god-awful Philadelphia Eagles just beat the Patriots. Now they're going to go into Houston, where they have a better defense, right, better rushing. Oh, wait, and how many times did Brady get hit against Philly? I mean, it's kind of scary.
And he has been. Even the game before that against, not against Denver, the game against the Bills. So Bills, Denver, and the Eagles. He's getting hit a lot more. He's getting a lot. He's on the ground a lot more than we want to see him.
Oh, absolutely.
I say we, as in me and as in Patriots Nation. We that's the last place we want to see Tom Brady is on the ground. And I can only imagine what it's going to be like once you have someone like J.J. Watt rushing the quarterback, or whether he's going to sit back. I don't know what his style could be.
Watt's gonna
but then you have someone like him. You also have across the line for the first time in a long time, actually first time ever, other than practice, Tom Brady's going to be looking at number 75, staring him back in the face, Vince Wilfork, which is, I can only imagine, is scary for a Patriots team that had drafted this guy, coached him up, and now they have to face him. Mm-hmm. They obviously saw something in him that they went, no, we're not going to re-sign you. We can find elsewhere. And I think they've done pretty well with the likes of Branch. I'm not going to remember his first name. Just another big defensive tackle that can gum up a couple guys and help.
He's no Wilfork.
But he's no Vince Wilfork. But it's somewhere down the line they went, Vince, you're not worth the money. We're going to let you go. Houston, on the other hand, is like, no, you are worth the money. Come on over to Houston, and we're going to find a place for you. And I think that has a lot to do with Bill O'Brien as well.
Well, Wilfork in the Houston defense is a very complimentary player because of his ability to play with J.J. Watt. And then add in the fact that you've got Clowney in there as well. Right. I mean, they are a dynamic trio of different skills and different assets to a defense. J.J. Watt is a utility player. He can sit back, he can play defense, he can play offense if you want him to, or he can rush and sack the quarterback. He's very dynamic. He moves around a lot. You don't always know where he's coming from. And he plays with such heart and emotion that it just kind of raises the bar, which is very, very good for a player like I can never say his name. Javion
Clowney.
Clowney, who is a young player coming in, kind of been beat up, hasn't been healthy, but he gets to learn from one of the best athletes in the game,
right.
Which is a unique thing which a lot of players don't get. And it's taken for granted in a lot of cases, but for him to come into a game with J.J. Watt and kind of learn his skill set, because he's a similar type of player. He likes to rush that quarterback. He's not quite as dynamic as J.J. Watt. I mean, his main skill set is getting to that quarterback. But, I mean, he's learning from the best. And so for Brady, you've got an offensive line that is just completely failing. You've got receivers that can't catch the ball or get open, so you're sitting back there longer. The ball's not coming out as fast. And then add in the fact, now we're going to add in Will Fork, who stops the run.
Right.
And now what do? Where are you going to go with the ball?
Do you see this as a game of which defense will break first? Because you look at a Patriots defense, and I get the Eagles put up a lot of points.
But it was defensive
but
points.
They were but 18 of those points were, or 24 of those points? No, 21 of those teams. 21 of those points were because of the defense. So it has nothing to do with the Patriots even. Take away that, and the Eagles scored 10-something points or whatever it be. So do you see it being which defense is going to break first? Because when you look at the offense of Houston, I'm not really too scared about it. I get that they have someone like Hopkins. I understand they have that offensive threat, but I'm not scared of someone like Brian Hoyer. He's a backup quarterback at best that's being put in a great situation in Houston to be able to start.
Well, sort of, kind of, not really. I'm an Eagles fan, and hey, I'd rather have Hoyer than Sam Bradford or Mark Sanchez.
No, but that's who you have. So I mean, but that's what I'm trying to get at. Like, if you were to go anywhere else, I mean, he could, depending on, and that's really honestly that's a fan's perspective. That's not a coach's perspective.
Yeah.
If Hoyer comes into somewhere like the Eagles, does he fit into the scheme? We don't know. But what I'm looking at is when I look at the starting quarterback, I go, I'm not too scared of Brian Hoyer.
He's no Tom Brady. He's not.
I mean, I look at someone like, and I feel like, yeah, I mean, I'd love to see what Brady could do if he had someone like DeAndre Hopkins on his team. So, I mean, I want to put it in the aspect, and I know that this is completely not comparable at all, but I'm going to throw it out there anyway. But it's like when I'm looking at someone like Stafford and Calvin Johnson. The reason Stafford has these ridiculous numbers sometimes is because he has such a great wide receiver in Calvin Johnson. That's what I kind of see with Hoyer right now. The reason that sometimes his stats are a little skewed is because he has an amazing wide receiver like a DeAndre Hopkins.
And see, this is where I'm going to challenge you with that. For the start of the season, it was all DeAndre Hopkins, and the reason for it was everyone else was hurt. He was their only good wide receiver, and they were playing with backups in every other position. It's not that case anymore. Is DeAndre Hopkins still putting up good points? Yes. But Cecil Shorts scored a touchdown in the last 2 games. He's put up good yards in the last 2 games. Nate Washington, very good receiver.
Nate Washington too.
And he's put up numbers. I mean, they are more dynamic than just DeAndre Hopkins.
Are they one-dimensional?
No, they're not.
What about with their running game?
Blue. I mean, he's been a backup to Foster for years. I mean, he's put up several 100-yard games throughout his career, backing up for Foster. And they have somebody else down there too that they're rushing. I can't think of his name. Is it as good as it used to be? No, but at the same time, is Arian Foster a true runner? Not really. He usually rushed for 60, 70, 80 yards a game, but he caught 60, 70 yards a game. I mean, he is that Matt Forte. He's that catching receiver or catching back. And they still have that with Blue, but Blue is a little bit more of a straight downhill runner. I mean, he's there to run, not necessarily catch. Cecil Shorts is now that easy target for those dump downs. And for me, it's hard saying because I can't fathom the Patriots losing 3 games in a row. But going stat per stat and looking at the way the teams have been playing, Houston is hot. They have been playing very well. Their defense is aggressive and very good right now. I don't know how the Patriots win that game.
Here's why I'm not jumping off the bridge right now as a Patriots fan. I look at that game, and we actually have the We have the fortune of doing this show on a Wednesday. We first do it live on a Wednesday. So as football fans in general, our teams play on Sunday or Monday. We don't have that immediate reaction Monday morning on a radio show to say, like, it's all going to heck. We're done. We're out of here. We're going to go 10-6 for the rest of the year. We have a couple days to kind of, for me anyway, as a fan, to simmer down and go, let's look at the facts, let's review this game, what the heck happened? And I see 6 defensive plays for the Eagles that went their way completely. Mm-hmm. You have Brady that, in my mind, obviously his receiver, I'm not going to make that as an excuse. I'm actually going to put Brady in the hot corner of this one. I don't know what he is seeing downfield sometimes. And I don't know if he's trying to get a defensive call. And he's actually said on a radio show earlier this week, he's always trying to get a call if he can when it comes to like a defender hitting him or something like that. But he's like, but all quarterbacks do it. And I agree, all quarterbacks do that. I'm putting him more in the hot seat because I just don't see what he sees downfield. I'm not seeing it. And he's throwing into double coverage. He's throwing into the free safety is just flying over there to cover up that one-on-one. And he had that long interception after actually catching a ball himself on a great play that I was jumping up and down. The next play, he throws an interception in the end zone. But I watched that play so many times. I don't see it. It's double coverage pretty much from as soon as LaFell gets a break. It's double coverage, and I just don't understand what he's seeing. I keep looking back and going, Randy Moss isn't on that field anymore, and they used to be like that. Where when Moss in 07 and 08 and 2009, when he was open, you saw that red glove go up, and you knew. That's it. Okay, just throw it deep. He's got it. He's got you covered. But he doesn't have that player right now. And I feel like he's still playing like he thinks he has that player.
I don't think he thinks he still has that player. I think with LaFell, he is that one last
but he's
decent
not.
receiver.
But he's not that he's not that player.
But he is the last chance he has, and he is trying to open up the field, trying to give them that opportunity. He is absolutely forcing it, and that is on him. We watched it several times in that game on Sunday.
Right.
And a lot of that is definitely on him. He's forcing the ball, but at the same time, I look at it from another perspective and go, he's got nothing but backup wide receivers. He is, as a quarterback, I can see him trying to somewhat give them an opportunity to earn a little bit. Or I just don't think
downfield is that way of trusting it. Brady, throughout most of his career, other than a few somewhat ridiculous years, has never been a great downfield passer.
Yeah.
So, it really all depends on if that guy is completely wide open or not. But he's definitely one of those check down, see the defense, and go underneath type of players or to the sidelines type of quarterbacks. That's where he excels. He's never been that deep threat quarterback. So I don't see why all of a sudden this year, when your receiving core is so depleted, that you feel the need to do that.
Well, another way to look at it, too, is if you look at the players in the past, short passes for them were great because they would catch and they would run.
Right.
When you've got Gronk and you've got Edelman, they are good after the catch. These guys aren't. You've got to get your yards somewhere, and unfortunately, they're dropping everything.
I guess that's why when I look at Houston, I'm like, you know what? I'm really not worried. I know that a lot of people are like, oh, they're gonna kill us, and I go, all right, well, let's see. If Brady stops throwing deep, if the receivers catch even half the balls that they dropped, and if the offense doesn't have blunders, or special teams rather doesn't have blunders, to let a defense score, or to let the opposing team score. And let's face it, when it's come down to the Patriots games, the special teams has really been their rock. Mm-hmm. So for one game out of the year, if they blunder, I'm not too worried about it. So that's when I want to look at Houston. If these three facets between Brady, receiving, and special teams they've had that one blunder and they can finally look forward, I'm not worried about a team like Houston because I think they're very similar to a team like Philadelphia. And it comes in aspect of talent-wise.
I think Houston is way better than Philly is. And like I said, I hate the Patriots and I love watching them lose with all of my heart. But at the same time, you can never look at the Patriots team as depleted as it is and goes, it's an easy win. It's not. It'll never be an easy
No,
win.
and I'm
It'll
not
be a
saying that
tough
at all.
game.
I'm not saying it's an easy win. I'm just saying
But
I'm
if-
not worried about it as much as I think a lot of other New England fans when they look at last week's game and the week before that against Denver and going, oh, they're done. It's over.
a trial game.
Right.
This is prove whether or not you can do this without your big guys. Because if they lose this game, it's going to be a rough end of the season. They're still going to make the playoffs, and they're going to get their players back for the playoffs, and they'll come back.
I think they have to win one game to make it into the playoffs, regardless what it is. So right now you're fighting for. I mean, there's no easy way to look around it. The Jets, they have 4 games left, and so do the Pats. The Jets win out, they're 11-5, and if the Patriots win out, then they're 14-2. But they got 4 tough games ahead of them. Now that you look ahead, they got 3 tough games. I'll call it 3. I'm not going to call Tennessee a really. That should be a pretty easy game for the Patriots to win. Tennessee 3-9 right now on the year. But I mean, we also said that about Philadelphia, who at the time also had 3 wins.
4.
Had 4 wins. So, I mean, that's kind of how you have to look at it. And someone like a Marcus Mariota that's just tossing all over the place. But is that Tennessee defense good enough to be able to stop the Patriots? And that's where I don't see that.
Yeah.
Again, I'm chalking up last week's loss to special teams blunders, and that's where I saw a majority of the issues, and that comes from a Patriots team that doesn't do that. Their special teams has always been rock solid.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely a very bad game, and I mean, I won't stand here and sit here, I guess. I won't sit here and say that my Eagles won that game. They didn't win that game. Patriots lost it, but
and almost won it.
And they did almost win it. But I wouldn't say be worried, but it's a risky game.
Sure.
Because that can go downhill real quick. And the scary thing for me is honestly Tom Brady's health, because J.J. Watt's going to get there, and he comes hard. Clowney's going to get there. He's going to be on the ground a lot.
I can see this Houston defense really tooling with the Patriots' offensive line that is. They're like a puzzle right now. You don't know which one fits where.
Butler's going to shut out Hopkins. I mean, he is. I mean, he's done it all year long. He's taken that number 1 receiver out. No questions there. But Hoyer has a lot of confidence with the next 2 guys, which is Nate Washington and Cecil Shorts. And for fantasy-wise, if you have Cecil Shorts, this is definitely a week you want to play him.
Do you want to get into fantasy just a little bit? I had proposed a question to you saying that as a fantasy football player, like for my league, our playoffs are just starting. So in a way, it's right now we have kind of 2 things we're thinking of, and the latter is not myself. The first thing was I looked at the free agency list and I said, who's on the IR that could potentially be a keeper for next year, or something that I could actually, maybe as trade bait or what have you. And looking around, I didn't see much. Pick up whatever, just because the latter part of it, I'm not in the playoffs. But in a league like what I'm in, you can still make transactions before the playoff starts. Yeah. Now, I know that you're in a league right now that your playoffs, they've already started, so everything's kind of frozen. There's no more free agent pickups, anything like that, no trades, no waiver. It doesn't matter anymore. What should a person do if they're in a fantasy football league right now that they still have a day or so to kind of work that waiver wire or start looking at free agents?
Well, like you said with the keepers, there are several guys out there that are on the IR that are worth that. And my number 1 person there is probably the Carolina Panthers receiver they lost, or the sophomore receiver they lost in preseason.
Okay.
I can't think of his name off the top of my head. But if he's out there, he is definitely a keeper. He's worth every bit of it.
And we're not talking like 8-man teams. We're talking like if you're in a 12 or 14-man playoff, or rather league, because right now I'm in an 8, but I have so many all-stars in my team. Yeah, I could pick someone up to keep next year, but am I really going to get rid of someone like an Aaron Rodgers or an Adrian Peterson type of player? So,
I mean, if you're looking... if you're picking up players for playoffs, you've got to make sure that you have that backup quarterback that's going to play every game. I mean, that's key because you've got teams like Carolina. Is Cam Newton going to play every minute up to the end? Possibly. No one knows. Will Brady? Who knows? We'll see where it goes. Will Carson Palmer? Who knows where will it go? There are several teams out there that their starting quarterback might play some of the final game, might not play all of it. So you got to make sure you have that quarterback just in case if your team gets into that spot.
I think a lot of people get into that rut where they're like, oh, I'll just ride this quarterback or ride this wide receiver until he stops producing, and then forget that down the line, maybe while your playoffs and championship game are still going, other teams are sitting people because there's no they have their spot set in stone. There's no reason for them to play.
So we'll see. There's not most free agencies at this point are wiped out just because there have been so many injuries. There's just no one left that's worth picking up. But I mean, you just got to make sure you have those roster spots filled. You got to make sure you have that backup quarterback. You got to make sure you have a backup running back, and you want to try to pick up that running back that is most likely to play. Carlos Williams probably not out there all that in that many leagues anymore, but he's worth it. You've got who else is out there? I mean, you've got a bunch of these backups, but like I said, the problem with this year in fantasy football is there's no one left to pick up. I mean, just look at the Patriots team, for instance. Right. I mean, there's no one left even in the NFL to pick up because everyone's beat up.
We have a person in our league. His keeper this year was I want to say it was Julian Edelman. He's a Patriots fan, and we always kind of razz him about it. His first pick was Gronkowski. So we're like, all right, great, you picked up 2 Patriots players. Little did we know he was, up until this last week of the regular season, was in first place because those 2 players carried his entire team. Mm-hmm. Now he's in the playoffs, but his 2 main point getters aren't playing.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's a problem for him that he's got facing right now. Where they got you to where you are, but now you have to find someone else. So I guess he's someone that would be in a.
The one benefit there is that out of all the positions, tight end has the most people still out there that are still worth picking up.
Okay.
Effort's out, so you got his backup. Gary Barnidge, if he's still sitting there, he's been fantastic.
Mm-hmm. And we saw him too.
I mean, you've got your big ones. You've got Gronk, you've got Eifert, you've got Olsen, Antonio Gates, Gary Barnidge.
Yeah, so you have
who's that tight end for Tennessee? They love him too.
I don't know.
Delaney Walker.
Walker, right?
Delaney Walker's been hitting it lately. So I mean, there's lots of people out there in the tight end spot to throw in there. And the more injuries that are happening, the more tight ends are going to get it. Receivers, it's pretty bare. I mean, there's really not much out there.
Yeah, and it really depends on your league as well.
Yeah, I mean, if you've got a small league, there's always stuff out there. But if you're in a 10, 12 plus league, I mean, it's barren.
Yeah, it's been slim pickings for a while. We can just jump back real quick because we want to talk about your Eagles real quick. The NFC East, a 3-way tie for first place. I mean, this time of the season, you got 4 games left.
So let me do this. I'm going to read off each team's remaining schedule,
okay,
and you tell me who's going to win. Who's winning that division?
Okay.
You've got the Giants, Miami, Carolina, Minnesota, and Philly.
So maybe best case scenario, 2-2. Losses to Minnesota, losses to Carolina, and then a pick'em for the Eagles.
See, the only catch there, and although I am an Eagles fan, Philly usually always beats up on them, and it's in Philly, and they already beat New York in New York. So that's an interesting one, but we'll stick with 2-2. We're going to go with Dallas, Green Bay, San Francisco, Minnesota, and Houston.
I know I have a Dallas fan that may or may not be why.
Let's add in Matt Cassel as a quarterback for those 4 games.
I'll go 0-4. I don't see it. I don't see the win for any of those teams. Blaine Gabbert's actually been playing pretty well for San Francisco. Minnesota's been rolling as well. I guess Houston and Minnesota, they're fighting for number 1. And same thing with Green Bay. So that's a tough one.
Yep.
That's a real bad schedule for Dallas to see at the end of the season.
All right, so let's go to Philly. Let's go to my boys. Buffalo, Arizona, Washington, and New York.
That's the Giants, right?
Yeah.
And I called that one a pick'em, right?
Mm-hmm.
Back and forth. best case scenario, I see 2-2, but honestly, I think 1-3. I think they beat, what was the third one? Washington? Yeah, no, I would actually keep it with New York. I think Washington could beat them the way that they've been playing lately.
All right. And now we've got Washington, Chicago, Buffalo, Philly, and Dallas.
So that could be a 3-1. It depends on Buffalo. It really does. They've kind of been back and forth. I lost my paper here. They're a 6-6 team, but I mean that's still that's one more win than Washington has.
All right, so you're saying odds are in Washington.
I think looking at it, I think Washington has, based on schedules alone, I think Washington has your best chance to be your NFC East champion.
All right, so that's interesting. We'll see how that plays out.
Well, looking at it yourself, what would you? And don't just say Eagles because you're Eagles. I think logically.
No, actually, I think the Eagles are going to go. I think the Eagles will go 1-3, and their one and only win against New York. I think the Giants 1-3. I think Green Bay 0-4. I mean, I think Washington's going to win it out. But as awful
with
as
their franchise quarterback not playing, by the way.
This is how I see it playing out. I see the Giants as 1-3. I see Philly as 1-3. I see Dallas as 0-4. And I see Washington as.
I think the only question I have is
2-2.
2-2 is the Buffalo game. That's where I think Chicago they could beat. I think Buffalo might be an okay game.
Now this is the funny stat to throw into that. Okay, so I really think their best case scenario, whichever team wins this division is going to go 2-2, and no one else is going to have it. So that would put 7-9 making the playoffs and winning a division.
It's not uncommon. What was it? Was it Seattle I don't want to say a few years ago, a good handful of years ago, maybe 5 or 6, they went 9-7 or 7-9, and they hosted a playoff game because they won their division. So think about that as well. Whatever team, they get to host a game where you're going to have someone else like a Green Bay or Minnesota. You could have Tampa in that mix, Seattle in that mix. They're going to have to go to a place like Washington or Philadelphia or the Giants, even though they have 2 to 3 more wins than they do.
Not one of these teams deserve to make the playoffs.
And then I guess that comes into another argument that is always brought up around this time when you have teams that are just so bad. Even though you win your division, should you even be allowed to be in the playoffs?
If you have not proven yourself as a division, I think as a division, if you have not proven yourself against the best teams in the league, no.
But who judges that? Does the commissioner step in and go, your teams are so bad, none of you get it? Or should there be a threshold? You have to win 10 games. You have to have a winning record, let's say.
Think of it as college football of...
Because theoretically, some of these teams could go 8-8.
I don't necessarily look at the record because if... say for instance, Dallas went 2-0 with Tony Romo. They lost him. They lost the next 7, 8, 9 games, and then Tony Romo comes back and they win out to win the division. Should they make the playoffs even though the record sucks? Yes, because the record sucked because they lost their star. They lost their captain. But when you're all year and there's really nothing other than you played that bad, no, you shouldn't. You look at college football with like your strength of schedule, that kind of stuff. Out of looking at these teams,
I guess what I'm getting is that in college football you have a committee. You have a group that says these are the 4 teams that should fight for the championship. In the NFL, do you have that committee that you use on a special occasion that says whether or not these teams should be playing or not? Or in a cheaper and easier scapegoat type of way, is it just the commission that steps in and says the NFC East would say you are none of you have proven yourself worthy enough. But then how do you rank that? How do you just look at the team? Just because most people are going to look at the record and go, they're 7-9 and my team is 9-7. Why does my team lose out on the playoffs and their team is in on the playoffs?
Well, that's really where I stick with not so much schedule, but who have they beaten? Who and how did they beat them?
So you're looking at a subcommittee that would overlook this and step in when it's warranted. But then is it warranted every year?
No, because it's not every year that we see a division that's this bad. I mean, this division is that bad. I mean, you look at Indy and Houston now, minus their schedule isn't any better, but at the same time, Houston's come to life. Indiana still has played well in a lot of games and just lost by a little. I mean, when we look at these teams, yes, Philly beat the Patriots, but no one can call that a win. That's not beating the Patriots. You beat up a diminished team on a bad day. You look at Houston, they're hot. So if they can continue and even lose a couple of games, they still have that threat of saying, we are that good of a team. Washington, they've lost to everybody good. Philly, they've lost to everybody good. New York, they've lost to everybody good. I mean, you have no place here. I mean, at that point, why doesn't Jacksonville have a shot at making the playoffs? I mean, hey, they could probably beat one of these teams.
Let me flip that script a little bit. When it comes to, you have these teams, like a Dallas, they're terrible. They, for some miracle, go 3-1. They go 7-8, 7-9 rather, and they make it to the playoffs. Now, they play all these really bad teams and they win, and they're not able to still play. A subcommittee looks at them and says, no, you're not worthy enough to play. But they still won their division. They beat the teams that are even worse than them. So why would we award another team in that division? Or are we just saying altogether that NFC East, you will not participate in the 2015
division? You're gone.
playoffs?
See you later.
Now, what about teams that are ridiculously good, that have a very weak schedule, and are able to? So, like last week, we were looking at Carolina's remaining schedule, and we went, this team's going to go 16-0. There's no two ways around
Atlanta,
it.
New York, Atlanta, and Tampa Bay.
Right, and before that was New Orleans. That gave them a pretty good game, and before that, I can't remember who they were playing. But okay, now you have a team that is just flying through these. Are they really that good of a team, or they just have a really weak schedule? So how can you reward a team in that sense?
But they've proven themselves. They've beat those good teams. Their ending schedule definitely was soft.
But look at their team, the NFC South. Like that's not a great division. So 6 games out of the year, they're able to play these really subpar teams.
Well, here's the thing: Atlanta is Atlanta's subpar team. They're playing awful, but they have a lot of talent. They're not an easy win.
6 games straight or 5 games straight they've lost?
I think 5. New Orleans Saints, no defense, all offense. Put up a good run against them. They're not bad teams. I mean, you look at Atlanta, beat up on Philly. Tampa Bay crushed Philly. I mean, these aren't bad teams.
Who did the NFC South play? What was their matchup this year against? Do you know? Because you know how they divide them up and they play one. So all I'm thinking about is Carolina has to play the Giants at some point?
Yep.
So if the NFC South is playing the NFC East as that back and forth, or even AFC South, I'd be a little reluctant to be like, okay, that's like 9 or 10 games this year. They're playing pretty subpar teams that aren't doing well. So now I'm looking at like, well, what if Carolina had to play a team like the Denver Broncos and New England Patriots back to back? How well have they been this year? Would they have been undefeated? I know it's all a roll of the dice when it comes to strength of schedule. You don't know what you're going to look at. Yeah. You don't know what your fate really is. You know a year before who the opponents are, but you don't know the road you have to get there. And I know that it's all decided by some other committee with equations and logistics and all that kind of things. But you really have to, it's almost like roulette. You kind of put in your 2015, 2016 roulette ball and hoping that it fits, your schedule fits the way, your team is suited right now.
Absolutely. I mean, it's been an interesting year. There's been a lot of injuries. Teams have just completely failed. But, I mean, I won't take anything away from Carolina. Their offense, their defense have played so well. Good team, bad team, it doesn't matter. They have played fantastic, and they have earned the spot they have. If they had played Denver, if they had Green Bay's schedule and had to play Denver and New England back-to-back, that's brutal. I mean, no one wants that. That's awful.
I guess that's what I'm getting at. Like, I want to see a little more competition for Carolina. And I think that's one of those teams I'll be watching very closely when it comes time for playoffs, that they have to play a minimum, is it 2 games? No, they'll have to play, a minimum 2 games, right, before they can reach the Super Bowl.
Yep.
So I'd like to see what they can do in those 2 games, and then you get to play the best of the best in the Super Bowl.
Like I said, I won't take anything away from them. I think they are the best team in football as of right now. I mean, I think there's a few threats out there. And those threats are not the New England Patriots, and they are not Denver.
Okay.
So, I mean, we'll see where they come out.
Okay, as we do every week, but we really get into it, and I think we had a little more of a more educated discussion about NFL. Let's throw NFL out the window. Let's go to NBA, because sitting at home watching Christmas movies last night with the wife, and I get a text going, holy crap, paraphrase Golden State, and I go to my phone and you texted me, and I go to see what the score is, and they scored 44 points in the first quarter against Indiana, and I went, whoa, this team is on the verge of 23-0, and it's like they're playing with children.
And what was funny about that game, it started out 10-0 for Indiana.
Really?
They went on a 10-0 run. Well, then it went up to 21-14. Still had the lead. And then they went on a 22-point run and just blew them out of the water from there. If I want to watch every Golden State game right now, because the play
Isn't that weird saying that as an East Coast person? You're like, I would rather stay up till like 10:30, 11 o'clock at night just to watch this team play.
The entire game is a highlight film. I mean, and what is so fun, and I've said this over and over and over again, is it's not one person. It's all over the place.
Klay Thompson came out. I won't say come out of his shell, but all of a sudden was like, whoa, hey, came to play too.
Yeah, he blew up. Bogert. Whatever.
Bogert.
He.
So Booger's on the court last night.
He had so many. He had a couple putbacks, and he had like 5, 6, 7 dunks off of toss-ups because they were guarding Curry. I mean, he's not that player that you look at and you go, oh, I got to worry about him. No, what happens is you leave him. You lose him because you're guarding everyone else, and then he's just going.
Right.
They make it look so simple, it's just ridiculous. So here's some of the stats, Curry stats for the season. 32.2 points per game. Field goal percentage, 52.9.
That's what I think is great, is that it's literally, I'm going to throw up 2, and one of them's going in no matter what.
3-point, 46.3%.
He's almost shooting as well as he is from behind the arc that he is from inside.
That's unbelievable. He's going to blow the 3-point record out of the door.
I think he's pretty much already there, isn't he?
No, he's got a lot more to go, but he's on pace for like 400-something 3-pointers in a season.
I thought I had read somewhere like within the first 20 games of the season, he's already broken Larry Bird's record, which was Larry Bird at the time, or whatever it was, for the first 20 games of the season. I think that's what I thought it was. Larry, I could be wrong, but like in that season that Larry broke that record, he had 100 threes, I think, the entire year, I want to say. I'm not 100%, but, and then Curry had it already beat by like 30 or 40, and he's only 20 games into the season.
Oh, yeah. I mean, he is unstoppable. 5 rebounds, 6 assists, and 2.3 steals, and 1.3 was it 1.3? I think it was 1.3 turnovers.
Okay.
He doesn't turn the ball over much. He rebounds, he assists, and he shoots the ball lights out. Now, as a team, 49.6. So let's call it 50% field goal shooting percentage as a team. That's pretty hard to do. 3-point, 44%.
Yeah, this team is shooting threes like, I mean, they don't stop. What was Klay Thompson was 8 of 10. No, he's 10 for 16 last night.
Yes.
So I mean, that's an easier percentage. He was shooting better than 50% from beyond the arc.
He was 8 for 10 to start the second half.
Right. No, yeah, to start the second half, he was 8 for 10 already.
They are scoring 116 points a game, 13.6 made 3-pointers per game at 31 attempts. I mean, no one is built for that. I mean, like I said, it's their ability to dive in for the basket and then just kick the ball out, and it's just whoever's open. Draymond Green, Klay Thompson, Steph Curry. I mean, they all shoot the ball so well, and they know each other so well. And what's so much fun about them is every night it's a different player. Klay Thompson hasn't broke 30 points yet this season outside of last night's game. Draymond Green played well all year. Well, he did nothing last night. Oh, but Clay did. I mean, they've got so many players that can step up and do what
they
they
can
need
shift
to.
them around wherever you need them. So looking at their remaining schedule, and I don't want to say remaining schedule, but like just in general, I think they're in Boston on Friday. I can't remember who they are on Saturday, but then they're in Utah, I think, on Tuesday. Where does this team? Because they're creeping on. I believe it was the Lakers holds the record for most wins in a row in a regular season. I think it was 33. They're at 23. They have 10 games to go.
No, they're at 26. Because
Yes,
they do
yeah,
count
I guess they
last
are
year.
counting. I guess my whole thing is like, okay, yeah, you can count last year, the last 3 games of the season, but I guess I don't because it's not exactly the same team. You know I get it's the same team that's playing together, but it's not the same situation.
Yep.
So we have a phone ringing, but it's not for us. Someone's just not answering it. So we don't have a phone. Okay, great. So anyway. So what I was getting at is that like I kind of see it as only like the 23. Like I see 23 as the record. I understand that.
They already have the record for straight
from the
wins to
beginning of
start
the season. I get that. But like when I look at the 33 from Lakers of the old time, and then right now with what they have right now is I'm counting it as 23 because this is a new season. Let's say they have 10 more games. They're coming off what is arguably so obviously so far, not arguably, but so far, their toughest stretch of the season because they're on a 7-game road trip. They've won 4. They have 3 more to go, I think, or they might only have 2 more. I think this is maybe the next 2 games. Could any of these teams that they're going to be facing in the short run pose a threat? Why not Boston on Friday?
Golden State learned a lesson last night of they put the bench in to start the fourth quarter, and they were going to sit Curry. They were going to sit them all for the rest of the game. Well, they sat them a little bit too long, and when they brought them back in, they were cold.
And that's what I had texted you last night. I went, oh, Pacers making a comeback. And you're like, no, they waited too long to put their starters back.
I mean, they learned that lesson. You can't do it against good teams, and Indiana's a good team. So before we get there, look at Indiana for a second. They are the next best three-point shooting team at 40%. And they showed it. They made a lot of threes. They played a hard game, and they have a lot of talent. They were not good enough, and Golden State tore them apart when they played their group. When you look at a road trip, the scariest stats, which sadly I forgot to write down, they're shooting better on the road than they are at home. So what do they have to care about?
I don't know what their points per game are at home as opposed to away, but all I could think of is what are they a little more conservative at home when shooting? Are their points maybe less? That's the only way I can really think about it is like on the road, are they just going out there and just throwing up whatever?
Well, I don't remember whether they had enough more points per game home or away, but their shooting percentage itself was better. And right now, when you look at the NBA, all right, so let's look. Cleveland Cavaliers, they've played awful lately. They're not that great.
They were on a 3-game losing streak
Three-game
before
losing
last
streak.
night.
Indiana Pacers, 4th best team in the Eastern Conference, and they really pounded them. All right, you've got Chicago Bulls, semi-good team, but they don't nearly have the talent to run with a team like Golden State.
They still don't have Rose around, right?
No. Miami. Does anyone care about Wade anymore? Oklahoma City Thunder. There is a team that can run. Russell Wilson. Russell Westbrook.
Keep saying that. Russell Wilson doesn't want to play in Oklahoma. I think he loves Seattle a little better. He's getting the rock a lot more.
Westbrook is not as good of a defender as you need for somebody like Curry, but they can run, and that's what you need. You're not going to beat this team with defense because they spread the ball so well and they can all shoot the ball. You got to beat them with offense.
Now, basketball is obviously not my strong suit. I'm trying to hold my own conversation here. Oklahoma, between Westbrook and Durant, did they just get those two back together recently, or have I been out of the loop?
Nope, Durant was hurt.
Is it a matter of time until these guys start to click again?
Oh, yeah,
and
absolutely.
then that team that they start to climb a little bit. And I understand when I say climb, they've only got San Antonio in their way if we're not counting Golden State. So again, another team like San Antonio that always seems to be clicking, even though their average age is like 35 and over. So I think it's just a matter of time really until a team like Oakland can start to be like, oh yeah, remember when we used to play really well together? Let's go out there and do that. And so I think when you're looking at teams that can maybe go toe-to-toe in a shooting aspect, Oklahoma might be that team that can do that in the
agree.
Western Conference. That may now do they have all those shooting answers? No, but they have a couple guys that will put a good 30, 40 points up there to kind of go toe-to-toe with Golden State.
You know who is the scariest threat for Golden State? It's kind of sad to say.
The Boston Celtics on Friday. I think the
Phoenix
exact
Suns.
same thing you were. Okay,
Phoenix Suns. They are scoring the ball very well. They are the second best shooting team in the league. I mean, they have the young guys, they have the talent, and they like to run. So they match up pretty well.
I'm just looking at some of the points per game, and it kind of helps my case, I guess, in a way, is Oklahoma City has the second most points per game behind Golden State at 108, as opposed to Golden State's 116.
Yep. So that's another scary thought. All right. So there's a 6-point difference between points per game.
And they're letting up they're letting up very similar to like the decimal, how many points they're giving up each game too. So the defense is there as well.
Yeah, Golden State's still 15 points per game higher than the next team. I mean, that everyone looks at Golden State, and yes, their shooting is prolific. They are fantastic. Their defense is nothing to shy away from. They are good. They have a lot of talent.
Can you call a team that lets up more than 100 points a game a good defense? Or is that actually, now that I'm looking at it, is that just a West Coast thing? Because right now, opponents' points per game for Eastern Conference, there's only 4 teams that do that, and they're the bottom of the ranks.
Oh yeah.
But in the Western Conference, there's only 2 teams that don't let up more than 100
Different
points.
style of play.
Okay.
So you have teams
Between the conferences.
when you look at Golden State, what do? They run down the court,
And
they shoot threes.
Right.
So what are teams doing with them? Running down the court. There are more possessions per game in the West Coast than in the East Coast. And I will say that with the one difference of being Miami when you had the big 3 there together, because they like to run the ball. Outside of that, the East Coast is really much more of a set play kind of system. They don't run and gun quite as much. And your best shooting teams are in the West. Are the best teams in the West? Not necessarily, but your best shooting teams are in the West.
Okay.
And you're looking at OKC with Westbrook and Kevin Durant both on top for points per game. You've got San Antonio Spurs, which just have loaded of young talent and old talent. Golden State Warriors, don't even need to discuss them. The Mavericks, they're still phenomenal. You and I were talking last week about Dirk Nowitzki and where he ranks as far as top.
Right, I think he's
points per game.
he's 6th or 8th or something like that in points scored.
Points scored. The Clippers, I mean, they are a prolific team to watch with Paul and DeAndre Jordan and Blake Griffin. I mean, they are that other team that you want to watch them play because it's so much fun. The style of play is just different. And defensively, when you run that much, points are going to be scored. I mean, Golden State doesn't hold the ball. I mean, when's the last time you saw Golden State run the shot clock all the way down? I mean, they look for that quick shot, and it just creates more possessions.
Okay. So you had okay. Let's we got 10 minutes left. Wow. All right, we'll skip that. Let's go with you had a question that you had seen earlier that you want to talk about. Go ahead. I'll leave you with it.
I was watching ESPN, and ESPN analyzer Legler was asked the best starting 5 in the NBA to beat the starting 5 of Golden State Warriors, which personally I just say the starting 5 of the Warriors, but I mean that's just kind of too corny and easy to say.
That was my answer.
So
Go ahead.
The best team breakdown of 5 players, doesn't matter position, doesn't matter who they're guarding.
So what you're getting at is form an all-star team minus your starting 5 for
Golden State
and their bench players. We're
Yep.
not adding Golden State players at all into this mix, and put them against an all-star team.
Yep. And I'll tell you the ESPN analyzer's matchups. He says LeBron, Butler on Curry, Kawhi Leonard on Klay Thompson, Durant and Anthony Davis, which I like for the most part. The one thing that's kind of interesting with that lineup is there is no point guard. You have no point guard to point guard, which I don't necessarily disagree with, because you have LeBron James, who more or less acts as a point guard. He's just ginormous. But when you look at those players, not one of them can go toe-to-toe with Curry. Not one.
Not one.
LeBron James, is he bigger? Can Curry guard LeBron? No. The
No,
size
so-
difference.
but
But
th- but
LeBron can't guard Curry.
Okay. I'd like to see it. I think LeBron would actually have an okay time with someone like Curry. I think when you have that tight end like physique that he has, wouldn't have a problem guarding someone like Curry.
He's too quick. His step back, his running, and the thing that makes Curry so dynamic is that ball comes out of his hands like that. I mean, his catch and shoot is just ridiculous. And for instance, shooting percentage-wise, his catch and shoot versus setup and shoot for 3 points, he's over 55% from catch and shoot on the 3-point line. I mean, he's too tough for LeBron to guard.
All right, so who would be your top 5 then? That
I keep LeBron in there, but I put Westbrook in. Westbrook's defense isn't as good, but he's good enough at scoring and running that I'd keep him in. Paul George did really well last night, and I'd keep him in. Durant, and interesting pick, but I'd go with Lopez.
Okay.
Because Bogut, he doesn't score a lot, but you need to have that big threat down at the bottom that is an actual center, because that's what Bogut is. He's not going to shoot from all over the court. You just need to worry about him. Don't worry about doubling up and pulling him off. You worry about rebounding and getting the ball. That's it. And Brooks good at that.
Okay, so you asked me this question. You said write down your starting 5 who you think would be able to go this. And again, NBA, not my strong suit, but let's have some fun. My first thought was obviously, like I think any NBA player is like, oh, I can't have Curry. Great, LeBron's my first pick. That's who I would go do that. Now matching up, I have no idea. That's not my strong suit at all. So I'm literally picking 5 people. I go, yeah, I think if we were going to get into a shooting match, I would take these 5 over the other 5. So I was going with LeBron, and I like the combination of Durant and Westbrook. I think you had mentioned that's something that you would like to see as well. And I'm looking at it now. Right now in the NBA, they're clicking. They have time. I'd put them up against this starting 5 as a twosome, because I feel like I look at it like in baseball, when you have a second baseman and a shortstop that just click and they can turn double play and they see each other on the field together. There's really no stopping that tandem, and that's kind of how I'm looking at it with these 2 players, where they're like the 2 guys that roll up and for like a pickup basketball game, but they've been playing with each other for 10 years and they know exactly where everyone's going to be on the court. The other one was Anthony Davis. Anthony Davis, did I say that right? Yeah, so someone that you didn't particularly like, but as a center and someone in that paint that can really take away from anything inside, I think he's a great force to have in there. And he's one of those players that every time I'm watching highlights, I'm looking for him. I'm like, oh, what did he do tonight? Oh, I'm watching him. And if a Pelicans game happens to be on NBA TV or something like that, I'm probably going to tune in for a little bit just to see him play. So I like him as that force in the middle. The other one, and I don't know how you react to it, but I'm going on the situation, Kobe Bryant. And the reason I say that, and I know you're a Laker fan, so you like that anyway, but the reason I say that, he's got nothing to lose this year. So if this year, right now, I'm picking 5, Kobe Bryant's my list because I want to get him the ball just to shoot. Here you go, Kobe. Shoot him up. Threes. Back up. I don't really care what you do, because if you're getting into a shoot, I see it. If you're going to be Golden State with a starting 5 anywhere, I don't think it's necessarily going to be on defense. But on the offensive side, I'm looking at 5 players that can put the basket in the bucket. So
I thought about Kobe too when I was doing my list, and I thought about Kobe for a couple reasons. Not so much because he's got nothing to lose, but because he is still he is not Kobe of old. He is not as hard to guard. But he still puts his moves out there.
He's one of those players that he's got that competitive edge, and enough of that competitive edge that if I had to say, Kobe, I need you on my team to play, and I don't know, he'd probably be like, Paul, I'm not playing, I'm retiring. Yeah. And he's not going to go out there. But he's one of those players that I would put on a starting 5 to face this team,
because he got hot,
that's what I mean. He's one of those teams, as he's 38 or 39 years, however old 38. Kobe is. he's still one of those players that if he gets hot, he can go off. I'm still waiting with his retirement tour for him to throw up like 60 or 70 points on one of these games, and I think it's going to happen. It's going to happen.
Oh yeah.
Because it's one of those players where one of the games, the game plan is going to be like, hey guys, let's just give Kobe the ball 100 times and see what happens.
Yeah.
So I kind of see that happening.
Oh, I do too, without fail. I mean, it's going to be the emotion of the crowd. It's going to be the emotion of the night. But he can definitely still do it. But I think it's interesting because when you look at this, looking at putting this all-star team together, what I find so funny about it is, all right, so we talk about the tandem of Westbrook and Kevin Durant. Who's Curry's tandem?
On his team right now,
Yeah.
I would have to say that from what I've seen, just from some of the games, that Draymond Green could be that kind of sidekick. I think obviously you have Klay Thompson. They're called the Splash Brothers for a reason. They're shooting threes. They're dropping buckets. But I see someone like Draymond Green who's not necessarily all offense. He's kind of that balance between the two that could be it. He's in no way any comparison in statistics-wise or historical reasons, but he's Kobe's Shaq.
Yeah.
When it comes to that,
Sort
someone
of.
like Draymond Green. Do you know what I mean?
I do. But the one thing that I look at when it comes to them is, and I've said this I think maybe 3 times tonight, is that there is no tandem. This is a team that plays so unselfishly, it's not even funny. There is no one-on-one. And that's, so last night's game against Indiana, you watched Indiana just break down and start going one-on-one, 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 and they lost and lost and lost. Golden State doesn't do that. They are constant pick plays. They are never standing in one spot. All of these players right here on both sides, they stand there. There's not movement like there is on Golden State. They are, and that's what makes them so much fun to watch, because there is never a moment where they're just standing unless they're catching and shooting, and that's it. These guys run 2, 3, 4 picks just to get one guy open, and each sprinting around in circles.
Their ball movement is so much fun to watch.
Oh, it's insane. And that's why when I look at these tandems of who do you get to try to match up with these guys, I just don't think there is one. I think I think the people who are going to beat Golden State is Golden State. They are going to have that fall game, which whether or not their shooting's not there or someone gets hurt, which honestly I think if someone gets hurt, they still hold it together. Because guess what? If you lose Klay Thompson, Andre Iguodala is now in your starting lineup. Who's going to argue that? So, I mean, these guys are good, and I will root them on. Will they go undefeated? Probably not, but God, I hope they do.
Okay, so from professional to non-professional, we're talking high school. JT and I have the pleasure to be able to do some play-by-play work for Franklin County. Wednesday the 9th is our first attempt tonight to do that for boys BFA basketball versus, I believe, North Country is coming to town. We're very excited to have that opportunity to be able to use BFA's new gym and have our spot behind the basket to call the games for you here on Northwest Access TV. Anything you're looking forward to just in general, because we're going to have yourself and I, we're also going to have our been play-by-play guy for a long time, Dustin Tanner, and Anthony Labor will be doing, they'll be at MVU for boys basketball. So it's fun that we have this little
it is. I mean, it'll be a lot of
teams.
fun. I can't wait to kind of get a first view of the kids and see where they are, and I'm excited to see that season progress.
Right, and then talk a little more local sports, because that's what we want to get into on Huddle Up is go local as best as we can. But we can't do that unless we see the teams. I'm not just going to go off what I read in the paper or what I see on Twitter. So I want to thank everyone for joining us on Huddle Up. I'm Paul, he's JT, and we're live every Wednesday from 2 to 3 p.m. on Northwest Access TV. You can also catch us on our YouTube channel. So until next week.